Thank you, Gus. It's always a little bit worrying when he didn't ask me any questions about me at all, and I was wondering what he was going to say. So welcome, everybody. Working with family, not always easy, and that's what I'd like to talk to you today about. So what is the formula for family success? First, I'd like to start with a few thank yous. I'd like to thank Mike and Poe and the Nuffield community for being so welcoming. I'd also like to thank my generous sponsor, Thatcher's, and my employer, NIAB, all who have been so supportive of me through my Nuffield journey, but none more so than my wife and children, who I cannot thank enough. So here's me on the left with farming in my DNA, and then again in the middle, having just graduated Y College with not only a degree in agribusiness management, with a girlfriend that later would become my wife. And here on the right, at the start of my Nuffield journey, and Nicholas Sapphire said this morning, sponsoring the conference, he started with a confession. And my confession is, behind the smile, I was struggling. I was struggling to get on with my family, and family relations were hard. And that's not something that we like to talk about in public. It's not easy to talk about. And what I hoped to do was go around the world and find out how those best families in business got along. How do they do that? And what, more importantly, I hoped it wasn't too late for me and my family. My Nuffield spark came from this guy, and it was on a Worshipful Company of Farmers course when he jolted me and said 60,000 UK farmers are going out of business in the next 7 years. And you can say, well, that's crazy. But what if he's half right? Those numbers are still alarming. We've got challenges stacking up on farming. We've got the loss of subsidies, but we've also got extreme weather conditions. We've got labour shortages. We've got market volatility, rising input costs. All of these pressures are rising. And that's on the back of, we're not worrying about any of this other family stuff that's going on in the background. It's on top of that. So where did I go? So my Nuffield study allowed me to talk with over 100 families in business and family business professionals around the world. And really, a lot of my key learnings came from New Zealand. These guys are really doing some extraordinary stuff post-subsidy. But it also, and I'm going to put this caveat now in, I was part of that COVID year group. We were encouraged to keep going, and it absolutely didn't stop us. And so I actually think we benefited from that, and people were quite open to sharing, and I certainly got more connections because of it. So what did I find? I found that the greatest family businesses around the world had a family charter. I'd never heard of this. It was something that was going on big time in New Zealand, but it was also going on all over the world. And why hadn't I heard of this? It was not only bringing business success together, but it was also addressing the family success part. It was like a set of rules for family and business, almost like a roadmap to direct the family. But the biggest thing that it did is it helped with open and effective communication. And what I want to do now is just bring in some of the ingredients from a family charter, from some of the standout people that I met. A family charter builds vision, and I was lucky enough to spend some time with Horst Schulze, who was CEO and president of the Ritz-Carlton. He was also a two-time winner of the Malcolm Baldrige Award, which is a presidential award in America for business excellence. A little bit like the Nuffield, but for incredible businesses. They feel obliged to help each other, and I went for help, and he said, I will help you and try and explain this to you. He told me that 90% of all businesses in the world have got no idea where it is they're going. They lack vision. And he said, you cannot lead anyone if you don't know where you're going. He also explained that they had an enormous study in America, 250,000 people looking at what motivates people. And number 7 on the list was money. Number 1 on the list was a sense of belonging. And number 2 was empowerment. And he said, these are the things we should be focusing on. And this couldn't have been seen more clearly when I had the day with James Timpson. And he explained his upside-down management structure and how his only role really was to trust and support his people. He said he's got two rules, to look the part and put the money in the till. Otherwise, get on and do whatever it takes to give great service to our customer. He was also incredibly sharing and open. And within the first 5 minutes of getting there, he took out his mobile phone and he showed me his bank balance. And it was what it was today and what it was a year ago. And he said, these numbers are really important, but not just to me, to everybody within the business. And I share these numbers with everyone in our business every week. It's not a secret. And this is probably my magical moment of Nuffield. When I met Eddie, and he was telling me about shared values. I saw this sign, and that was it. I followed the sign. That was my only lead. And I went quite a long way off the beaten track to find a door that I knocked on. And I explained that I was a travelling Nuffield scholar, a little bit about William Morris, what he had done and what I was hoping to do. And the hospitality that was shown to me was truly humbling. I was guest of honour for supper. This was a community farming together with several families. And we all held hands for supper and prayed for one another. And they put me up in this little cabin here overnight. But he told me the importance of shared values, the importance of looking after each other, and the importance of having a deep respect for each other. He said this values is something that we have to understand. It's who we are and what we stand for, and to understand that values drive our behaviour. And then this guy, Chris Korhiki, he had quite a job on. He was managing lots of families within some of the Maori multi-land trusts. And he explained to me the importance of communication, but not talking. He said the important part was deep listening. And that was listening where families felt heard and understood. And in this model on the left, which I'll try and explain what's going on within a family, what you're trying to create is trust. So trust is the holy grail within your family that you need to have. And you need 3 key ingredients to make trust, which is honesty, openness, and fairness. And you need all 3. If one of those is missing, it doesn't work. But all of this has to exist within an environment of respect. And respect is like the air in the room. It's not a problem until there isn't any. I met Kevin Wilcox and his family, who explained the importance of ownership and understanding where each family member sat within the business. So not just within, and this was all the family, so they didn't have to be working in the family charter incorporates everyone. But understanding where they sit in the family, in the business, but also the ownership. And not just now, but what that might look like in the future. And he explained how they'd taken the ownership out of their business and the generation above had kept the land and they were renting it as the cousins' generation. He also explained to me the importance of having shareholders with active roles in the business. And then these guys, that was -30 and Mr. Chips. This guy's the biggest potato grower in New Zealand. A very complex family structure here, all working alongside each other. And he told me the importance of having clearly defined roles and responsibilities. And this creates space for each family member within the business, and it aids with clarity, and it reduces misunderstanding, and also reduces conflict. It was all brought together to me, and my sort of penny drop moment came when I met these guys, the Turley family. They were bringing everything together, and Murray was explaining how the family charter was really protecting themselves from themselves almost. The Turley family his father had started with 62 acres, and today he's over 10,000 acres. They've got a third share in dairy holdings, which is 59 dairies, over 50,000 dairy cows. These guys up here, this was a pond, they collaborated, they took me to this pond, 750 acres, this is what they're like. 20 farmers collaborating together. They fill that pond 3 times a year and it waters 33,000 acres. And then here, they've got a lot of wheat, but he wasn't happy with just a lot of wheat. He wanted to add value, but not just for himself, for the neighbouring farmers as well. And so he built a flour mill, and they were doing incredible things. Land values had gone, and growth in his business had gone from, started at $5,000 a hectare, and they'd gone up to $50,000 a hectare in a generation. And the banks had lent at up to 65% of the value of their asset. So they had an incredible growth. And Murray talked to me about this extra person in their family, the bank manager, and having to manage that. And then this comment came up, which is really what hit me. You can have the best numbers in the world, but if the family can't get along, it's all been for nothing. And I thought we had a good business, but we weren't getting along. And this was something that the banks were worried about. And so you can have the best numbers, and they did have the best numbers. Their businesses were incredibly well run. But if the family didn't get along, and that's where their focus was. So why are we doing any of this? This is an important part of where most family charters start, starting with the why. And I've asked this question several times of lots of people I've met, and they tell me freedom, flexibility, passion, emotional connection. But if you ask them again and sometimes again, and on reflection, and I've had phone calls the next day, they often come back with these 3 things. We want our family to be happy, to get along, and to do well. And really, the family charter is asking 3 fundamental questions. Do we want to remain as a family and business together? And if we do, how are we going to do that? And thirdly, who are we calling family? So are we including everyone here? Stepchildren, adopted children. What about sons and daughters-in-law? This has big impacts on a family business. I've got the times up here. This is my final slide. Don't pull me off. My Nuffield learnings. The greatest family businesses in the world don't just know their numbers, and they don't just look after their people. They are uniting their families, and they're doing that with a family charter. And that family charter is bringing vision, empowerment, and shared values to those families. It's helping communication, and it's understanding the ownership and accountability. And finally, what about me? Well, sadly, it was too late for me. Things had gone too far. But I do believe if I knew 10 years ago what I know today, I would still be farming today. So get on with it would be my advice. Thank you for listening.